Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. It's been 10 seasons of empowering you and hand-holding you, the small business owner, in your growth journey. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. Tonight, we're bringing you our new series that we're calling the Leaders of Tomorrow Hangout, where we're literally hanging out with the young people of today, asking them what is top of mind. Tonight, in what India's youth is thinking about, we are here at the IIJNM campus in Bangalore, talking to students about gender. What are the conversations around gender that they're having? What really is the perception when it comes to gender equality? What is happening on the ground as far as gender equality, gender disparity is concerned, and all of that in conversation with students of this college as well as 3 experts. Let me introduce them. First up, Kanchan Kaur, Dean IIJNM, Bangalore. Dr. Piyush Roy, Professor and Founding Dean, School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, RV University, Bangalore. Rida Tharanaa, content creator, anchor and model. She also does a popular series on women's empowerment. Yes, of course, speaking in the backdrop of Draupadi Murmu and our first female Dalit president. So that's a good move. At least some progress is being made. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I am Anupreksha Jain. So my question is to Ma'am Rida. Women make up around 43% of the total graduation in STEM field, that is science, technology, engineering and mathematics, which is highest in number across the world. But this number does not translate into employability. So what are the hurdles women encounter to get employment, particularly in this field?
Family, society. If you've noticed, your parents are going to force you and ask you to get into MBBS. You might not even be interested to be a doctor, but they will ask you to. But when you ask them, can I work? Do it after your marriage, right? I feel like firstly, the biggest hurdle is ourselves, because when we are growing up, we see the society around us. We see women getting married early, our parents telling us the same thing over and over again, which we think our role is to do that. And slowly when you have social media access, we have people coming journalism into picture, you think, oh, that's not how the world is. What my parents are teaching might be different. But with middle class, lower middle class, your first fight is yourself, because you think you're not capable of doing that. Your second fight is your family. Because every other person has a say in your life of what you want to do. The reason it doesn't convert is because you've already been said your degree is for the invitation. You get to do what you want to do after you're married. So the whole concept again is your husband will decide if you have to marry or not. And that is why it doesn't change. And let me tell you, right now we have an option of, do you want to be independent? Do you want to be married? Do you want to have a baby? Do you want to be a mother, right? But before, you're a complete woman when you have a man. You're a complete woman when you have a baby, right? You're dependent on your parents before your education, you finish your graduation, you want to be financially independent, but they are like, do it after the marriage, you know? Again, you're really educated, being able to make decision woman, gets married, and then you're financially dependent on your husband again. What more can you do?
Yeah, and in fact, we were discussing this offline. There seem to be certain professions that are drawing in more women. For instance, just look at the students that you have today. Yeah. Because we're speaking with journalism students, a lot of them and a lot of us tend to be female, and perhaps are bringing in that change. But is this a representation of what you see year on year in terms of having more women who are coming in?
Oh yes, it's getting worse, if you want to call it that way. Okay. There are more women than there are boys. But what I'm interested in knowing, and I really don't have numbers for it, is how many of these women actually stay on in the profession. So I was in a newsroom recently, I spent a few days recently, but I found that a lot of women were in the newsroom. The newsroom was quite populated with a lot of women, and a lot of women were leading the shifts, which was not the case when I was working, right? I don't know if that actually translates into women, or maybe it was this one newsroom which consciously made this decision.
No, actually it's true, but, I would say, of media houses that you see, and we are a very small microcosm.
Absolutely.
Right? Thankfully, at least this is one profession where you have more number of women, and even at senior roles.
Yes.
Not just at the entry level.
That's right.
But how do you then, and my follow-on question, and if any of you have any answers to this, how do you encourage more women into other professions that are seen as more analytic, that are seen, you know, say finance, for instance? The question was in STEM. So how do you encourage more women to study these courses? Any of you have maybe any personal examples? I'll just come to you in a moment. And how do you encourage them to stay on in these professions? Go ahead.
I'm Dipali. I'm a student of IIJNM. So before joining here, even till the last step, I was boarding my, I was in getting into the car. My dad was like, you can decide even now if you want to get out of, this is a very dangerous profession and you have the privilege. It's okay. You don't have to go study there. You can do anything you want. Even now he calls sometimes, it's okay. You can be a journalist how many years ever you want and then maybe decide not to pursue it further. Don't pursue something, don't do hard news. Get into like, you know, features or something is not, does not have issue with safety of your safety. So it's not safe. So I don't understand how we are working towards it. Like sure. As so many, you pointed out, like so many women are joining the media. How is collectively we're working towards it?
Sure. I think there is, in the interest of time, there is, I want to hear from the boys. And do you have a question? Or can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sai Arvind and I'm also a student of IIJNM. And I'm also a student of IIJNM. So, despite the efforts of globalization and the economic policies and whatsoever, there has been a decline of women in Indian workforce from 2004 to 2019. And my question is, are the Indian industries, you know, aware of this thing? And if they are aware, and what are the steps are they trying to take? You know? This is for the whole panel.
So a lot of companies do announce when they're talking, when they're recruiting, they say that they want to be recruiting more women and transgenders and so on and so forth. They do that. There are some companies that consciously try to encourage women in their organizations. But the question again, and I really keep coming back to that whole business. How many women are there who actually do these STEM courses, do finance, for instance, and get into the business, and then, of course, once you get into a man's space, if you were to call it, there's another battle to fight over there. To be taken seriously, to be understood, and to be given the space, like I keep saying, to perform to her best level. So that question keeps coming up again and again.
Yeah, I think it also leads into some of the other observations, and this whole thing like this gendering of streams and careers is something I'm still also trying to fathom. Maybe it could be a collective discussion can bring, because we are seeing in, for example, liberal arts, it's a very new concept, you know, the NEP and all that coming in, but 80% of our students are, girls. So why boys are not doing liberal arts? Now that is an interesting question. And is it like, and the whole traditional orientation of humanities, arts, girls should do, and STEM and that whole masculinity around STEM subjects, and now they want to make it STEM to STEAM, bring arts into it. And this whole thing is, I mean, this is like a society is a dynamic plane, and in that all these things are happening, and we are seeing certain things definitely happening out there. But I would like to listen from other panelists, like, why do you think this is happening this?
And if I can piggyback on that and go back to what you were just talking about when it comes to companies which are hiring, since year after year you see your students who are then being hired by these MNCs and by these large companies, the conversation as far as gender diversity, is it well entrenched enough when it comes to Indian businesses as well, or is it more, a global practice which is yet to find its way into India?
I think it's both ways. Some of them, some Indian companies are doing this consciously, but I think a lot of the global companies are more conscious about it.
You know, one of
I
the
think it's
tricky things with MNCs is they have numbers, right? They have
Yes.
numbers that we need.
I know.
Yeah.
These many men
Yes.
and these many LGBTQ.
Yeah.
They stop hiring women right after that numbers are done.
I'm going to take a quick break on that note. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, this Leaders of Tomorrow Hangout edition coming to you from Bangalore. I think there's a question right at the back. Can we have a mic? And you can introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, my name is Suresh Kumar. My question is, so we had a precedent even in 2007, which was who was a woman, Pratibha Patil, and 2022 we again have a Draupadi Murmu appointed as a president. But that I don't think so changes anything on the ground level. So what can we do? Why are not parliamentarians passing a law, which I guess will be more substantial, ensuring that a certain number of women are in the parliament? You know, instead of having more men in the parliament, we have a kind of a 45-55 ratio or something like that.
I tend to disagree. Any sort of representation, even if it is just a token, is always good. At least that's my view. And in India Inc., forcing this kind of representation, unfortunately, hasn't worked. It's a great move. But
The
it's a
other
vote
thing you
of
can do
candidate.
is when you go to vote, you look at all the women over there and vote for them. That's one way of doing. No, really, if the parties are not coming up with more women candidates, the only way to do that is to encourage them to do that. And we should persuade parties, and if we are in positions of power, we should encourage women to go into those areas. It's the same thing whether you're going into an IIT Madras or or any of these so-called STEM courses, or you're going into politics. It's not a nice place. It's not a nice place for a woman anywhere if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
So you really got to change that. That is what needs to be changed.
I think they were talking about the safety bit, and that's what it plays more. You look at an occupation, and for men it's like, oh, I want to do that, I want to be there. But with women, am I safe here?
Yes.
Will I actually survive for the longest? So that's one question they look at, any occupation for that matter. You might be really interested in doing maybe films, or let's just consider doing a lot of things. But then we've not seen a lot of other women. Yes.
I just want to take his question, sorry I didn't catch your name, and flip it around and ask, and perhaps Piyush, you might want to take this question, is that there's a mandate that you have to have a certain number of independent directors for any business who's a woman. What has happened because of that is that companies are force-fitting in some sense women into those roles, which means you're not necessarily finding the best candidate, you're not necessarily finding the skill sets that you need. So could this sort of reservation or quota system then end up just backfiring?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because this is what we need to think. I mean, yes, you said, I partly also agree with you, like this tokenism, but still that visibility, that the discourse has opened.
Yes.
It helps there. But then you have the series like Panchayat and all, and there are so many Gram Panchayats and all that, where it's still the men who are controlling the affairs of the, all the decision making. Just the women is just a nominal person out there. So that's why reservations, that again is a larger debate, like reservations, be it on caste, religion, or any other categories. So what are we looking at the end of it? Quality. And somebody as a leader for tomorrow, should they be earning that space, or should they be going through the nomination process? Because all said and done, Draupadi Murmu was also a very good candidate for the roles. He's earned that. That's why the respect is there. It's not like she went there because she was just a tribal. She had been a very successful minister before, and a governor and all that. So
and I understand was also a teacher, so she has academics to her credit as well. Last maybe couple of questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello everyone, I'm Isha Saxena. I have a follow-up question, ma'am. As we were talking about Draupadi Murmu, she's the President of India, and she is a ray of hope to the entire rural community, the women, specifically. In the past, we have always seen that men are supposed to be the ideal workforce. But over time, this particular definition changed a lot and it became more inclusive. So what do you think has impacted the self-reliance of women specifically in rural India?
Okay. I think there's another question here, yeah, around the same theme. So we can just quickly take that, yeah.
So, my name is Neha, and my question is, Draupadi Murmu being elected as the 15th president was a historic moment and another step towards social empowerment of women and ethnic minorities. But to what extent and how do you think are the common women and those of ethnic minorities impacted by her anointment? Or is it mere tokenism?
Okay, so somewhat a continuation of the earlier question, but very briefly can we address it and then we can take closing comments?
Yeah, sure. I think to answer her question, even if it's tokenism, people need role models, right? And the minute you have somebody who's a role model, it helps. There's a whole series of books that comes up with rebel girls doing this and so on and so forth, and there's a whole lot of women who are shown as role models, and I think that tokenism is necessary. But beyond that tokenism, but I really don't know how to answer your question about how that change has happened in the rural areas, but I'm guessing it has basically happened due to general development and the need for women to come out and do work. You know, the other thing that has happened is a lot of men from rural areas are moving into urban areas, and the women are left to, let's say, hold the fort. And that, I think, has pushed them into doing better.
I'm going to quickly take closing comments, unfortunately, in the interest of time. But thank you for all the questions that have come in, and that gives us some sense of what India's young people really are thinking about when it comes to gender diversity and inclusivity, and just the discourse around gender. And that is my question to you. This entire conversation around gender, and since you've been teaching and in the academic space for so long now, Kanchan, my question is, how has what you are teaching changed over, let's say, what was happening 5, 7, 10 years ago versus what you're teaching now, just in terms of this entire discourse around gender?
I think there is a lot more emphasis on gender. If you look at the kind of people we call to talk, the kind of conversations I see within the young people themselves. So even about 10 years ago, if there was somebody who was not exactly LGBTQ, but also maybe was leaning more towards femininity, maybe a boy or something, they would be in trouble. But if you look at the conversations the young people are having today, they are really very interesting, and they're very wholesome. And I think that has changed over the last few years, definitely.
And I know in some part you've answered this, and you're saying, the answers, you yourself are wondering where that answer is, but if there are, and since a lot of them, I would assume, are going to go out and be working closely with making films and are going to be influencing that, one thing that you want to leave them with to say, this is where that dialogue should start or should be influenced.
I think the dialogue should come into the story and then tell your story, bring in your dialogues, and then it will become a new narrative. It will have its takers, because we are looking for those voices that are with you, and we want to hear more of that. See, that is precisely what the OTT, the new media revolution has done. So many voices who would otherwise be not allowed in the so-called nepotism of all these entertainment spaces are coming and speaking, and the platform starts from YouTube and goes far and wide.
Yes,
yeah.
True.
My question to you then, you're doing great work in content really around gender diversity and empowerment. But if there's one thing that perhaps surprised even you, and you were, you're saying you get a lot of comments, people are asking you, is there something that surprised you that came in the comments? How did you deal with it? And how has that perhaps opened up your mind to these conversations that are happening?
With me, I think it's basically learning and unlearning the entire process. I think the reason I'm able to even speak up or be here is because of my experiences and what I've gone through. As I said, if I were to be privileged, I don't think I would have been here at all. So being privileged is not, but I am so happy that you're there. You don't have to experience all of this, but it's widening your bubble and learning what the world is around and how it is affecting other people and how I can change with things. Comments don't affect me anymore, but I really, really like the space because my target audience were always women. We have 81% of women following me. And it just makes me happy because every DM that I get is them choosing a path. I'm able to say no. I made a decision of getting out of an abusive relationship. I got my favorite job today. I earned my first salary. I got something for myself. It's not societal oriented, but they know what they want. It's, I think, as I told you, empowerment for anybody for that matter is to be able to make decisions for yourself and freely think.
Okay, so Kanchan, Piyush, Rida, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all of you. Actually, a round of applause for our students who've joined us today. Thank you so much for your questions that you've asked. And more power to all of you and all the very best. Out of time on tonight's conversation. If you want to know which college we're headed to next, do let us know. Our contact details are on our website. It's coming up as we speak. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good night.